Hey MBA aspirants, so again I'm back with Visionary Voices. As discussed in the last video, we will be talking to some eminent people from the industry or from the academia. So I have two young minds, one Aalekh from IIM 2015 batch and other Arsh from FMS Delhi 2021 batch. Believe me, young people, young minds who have served in the industry and then plunged into entrepreneurship in the field of education. So these guys are very important for you because they have seen the best business school also, they have seen the industry also, and now they are into MBA education for which you are aspiring for. So Aalekh is one of the founder of Altera Institute of Management, and these people are working hard day and night to create corporate leaders. Primarily corporate leaders who can fit into the fitment or who can fit into the gap which exists between corporates and MBA education. ये एक बहुत पुराना क्वेश्चन है जो हमेशा से एग्जिस्ट किया है, बट these guys are here. I mean, I told you last time also that this is one medium where you can interact with such people. You can, I'm there to ask questions on your behalf because I know what kind of questions are there in your mind at this stage when you're preparing for a B school. Now, since you've appeared for CAT, the second stage is coming. So a lot of things with respect to interviews, with respect to a lot of questions in mind, with respect to selection of a B school, and what is exactly happening in the industry today, what management education is doing today. We are here to discuss that. So welcome guys on this Visionary Voices. Believe me, this is an amazing concept which I've launched, and I'm trying my level best to help the student community.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate that, and I think this is a very good initiative to help the students to bring more voices, more perspectives to the students.
And last time we have already launched one video, Arshdeep, and now we are coming up with the second one today, with a hope that these guys will get a lot of value addition from you, and a lot of sensible questions can be answered, so that these guys can, prepare not only for the interview part, but also for the, let's say, the career choice, which is a very difficult choice today, that so many colleges exist, and where to go, how to go, where to apply, where not to apply, etc. So let's start with the first one. This is to you because you have served in the industry. You have also served in the industry in consulting and e-commerce segment, which is untouched segment. So what is the gap which exists between a fresh MBA graduate who has just passed out from his MBA education and when he is joining the industry? Because that might be the motive for you guys to start this place.
So thank you for the question, sir. I worked at Hindustan Lever, which is often called the CEO's factory. So I had the privilege of having the best business education that this country has to offer. And then I went to a company which is known to be breeding ground for leaders. So I think I can share some perspective on this. It was during my time at HUL that I realized that because the digital landscape is evolving so fast, if you just look at what's happened in the country in the last 10 years, all consumers are now consuming content on digital platforms. They are buying things online, and we are paying for things via digital mediums also. All of this has happened broadly in the last 10 years, if I have to say roughly. When we were working in the e-commerce business, in the digital business at HUL, that's when we realized that there was a dearth of talent or a shortage of talent. When we were going to B schools to hire students, we realized that students did not have perspective on digital marketing, on e-commerce, on product management and growth marketing. And then I got to thinking, because I have always been passionate about education, I got to thinking, why is this the case? That students even from tier 1 B schools, tier 2 B schools, very good B schools, they've worked hard, they've invested lakhs of rupees into their education, they've invested 2 years into their education. Why is it that they don't understand it? And I realized that it is a structural problem. Because whenever the field of industry evolution is evolving faster than the pace that academia is evolving, that gap will keep increasing. It's like a graph, right? If the slope is lower for academic research, it will always keep increasing the gap. That is true for e-commerce, digital marketing and product management. Now, if you look at our jobs landscape and careers landscape in the last 5 years, this is where all the jobs are being created. All the jobs are in technology roles, digital first roles. And the traditional MBA does not solve for this because the curriculum cannot reinvent itself at the same pace. Not just the curriculum, but the mentors, the professors need to reinvent themselves at the same pace to be able to cater to this gap. That is the gap that I saw, which was more pronounced in digital first roles, which is now almost half the roles that students aspire for. And I did not see that changing basis how the traditional B schools, the pace of growth that was there, which is why we decided to start the Altera Institute.
Okay, so prima facie the idea to launch this product, but you took this call very early. I mean, just serving in the industry for 5-6 years, I believe. So this idea came because of this reason, that gap only, or was there anything else in your mind other than the gap that exists in the industry that I understand?
Right.
Because I'm serving in the education industry from past 20-22 years,
Right.
and I've seen the gap.
Right.
So what is the main idea behind it?
So there was a two-sided problem, sir, and my motivation was also two-sided. One was obviously I saw the opportunity on the industry side that there is a gap. But more importantly, something that I feel more passionately about is giving equal opportunity to as many students and early career professionals as possible. Let me explain. In the current scenario, most of the education actually happens in the companies. So if you ask me where I learned sales in HUL. Where I learned 90% of the marketing that I know today, I learned it at HUL. The problem is that these companies will hire only tier 1 B school students because they want to not take a risk on anybody and they have limited seats. So for students, for the lakhs of students that don't get the option to go to an absolute tier 1 institute like the one that I had the privilege of going to, you don't have an option because these companies will not spend their resources in educating you. The college that you went to, they tried to educate you, but they failed to educate you in a particular field. So now it's become a closed gate community, saying if you have gone to a top company, you're able to learn. And that is what I wanted to open the doors to a lot more students, saying that, hey, if you went to IIM ABC FMS, great. More power to you, you should go. But for the lakhs of students who are not managing to go, where is the career opportunity? If you don't go to a tier 1 company or go to a high growth role, you don't get that opportunity also. So the main motivation for me personally was to enable these career options to more and more students so that they can also give themselves the best chance. Obviously, everybody has to work hard, but then that hard work is directed in an effort which can give their career the growth that they aspire for.
In fact, just one more perspective on this is if you just look at the overall landscape, right, education landscape, be it particular to, management education also, what we have done, I'll talk about three things. The first is what we have done is we have built, great filtration methods, right? You have the best tests probably in the world, right? CAT, UPSC, JE and all, right? We've built great systems to, filter out talent, right? And we've done a commendable job through years, right? The second is, providing access, right? We are one of those countries that has which has a quota system. Of course, we can debate about its implementation, but it does add real value to some people, right? And it's absolutely great that that exists because education has to have that role for people, right? The third is where we believe, we can add value through Altera is, and, which we believe we have been able to do is just also provide, relevant education for people who would otherwise not have access to that. Right? Let me just double down on that, right? If we just talk about stats which are particular to, let's say, this MBA whole landscape, right? Around 2.93 lakh candidates, appeared for CAT this time. If we just, do some numbers, 50% were serious, let's say, right? We come to, and then 50% again, who are, let's say, who have the aptitude. There are still easily 50-60,000 people who deserve to get good quality education, right? Now, all of us know that, and if we just take our guess also, and every aspirant here will be able to raise, will be able to relate to that. Everyone wants to go to an IIM, right? Or FMS, ex-IIM, ISB, and SP Giants of the world, right? Even if we just increase that list, that gets to around, 20-25 B schools, max 30, which are aspirational by default, right? And if we just take a number of, let's say, 600 seats on an average, 500, 600 here and there, you come to a number of around 15, 16, max 20,000 seats, which are great, right? Now let's talk about the delta, right? That 40,000, students who deserve to get good quality education, right, but are not getting access to that, right? And on the other side, there are companies, right, as Aalekh mentioned, who are looking out for that talent, right, skilled talent, but are not able to get access to them, right? So this is overall a systemic, it's not a failure, right? It will be a very exaggerated statement to say, but just a thing where, like it's an opportunity rather, I would say, where, you need more people coming into the space of education to solve for it, right? Which is where, we believe that we have a small role to play just in the overall.
See, MBA aspirants, those primarily who are watching this shot, I would say, उनके लिए एक बहुत important valid point है जो उनके दिमाग में भी चल रहा है, because they've just appeared for CAT, scores have released. Now what they're looking at is interviews. I mean, it's a next, second stage which is difficult. So अभी जो stage चल रहा है दिसंबर जनवरी, मैं बहुत content development के लिए लोगों को बोलता हूँ. Primarily अगर मैं आपसे बात करूँ, because you guys are from, let's say, god of MBA colleges, IIM, FMS Delhi, I mean, it's like an aspiration. You would have prepared for it. Now, what is the most important criteria, or what should be their focus right now to prepare for the interview stage, which they'll be appearing typically in the month of March or April?
Sure, I'll have a first stab at it. So I think the one thing that is more important, which at times, and I'll also talk from my own experience. It took me a couple of interviews to realize I'm getting it wrong. Is just to, be 100% sure and confident of who you are as a person, your own profile. Because what happens is, as soon as you get a shortlist, right, you have, different perspectives coming in. Ki GK strong hona chahiye, ekdam se newspaper, people will start picking up, right? But, that all is secondary, right? Because the primary, the PI is a personal interview, right? It's not a functional interview, right? So I think just, sit down, spend every day 2 hours, write down about yourself, right? That, something as basic as just say your introduction, tell me about yourself, because the questions will start coming in from that, right? I'll recall my IIM Calcutta interview. It went on for 30 minutes, right? It was one of the most grilling, but I'll still look back at it as one of the most enjoyable interviews I had, right? And in my first 2 minutes, I mentioned I'm from Kurukshetra, right? And we talked 15 minutes just about Mahabharata, right? So, you can't plan for it, right? It's all something, but at the same time, could I have predicted it? Of course, right? Because it's something that I say in my first introduction, in the first line as I'm introducing myself, right? So just as an advice, just coming back to the question, just sit down, write down about yourself, right? And just look at tails, right? If say you have mentioned that you have done, let's say, applied physics in your undergrad, right? Then do you even know some basic questions, or, anything on which you can have at least a 5-10 minute conversation with the other person, right? Just you'll yourself be able to figure out key themes around it, right? Everything else is secondary, I believe, right? So that is something that everyone has to cover. Yeah.
I think one thing that I find often missing in MBA aspirants, as well as interview aspirants for jobs also, and it's a very simple framework, which is, do you know what the other person is looking for? If you can't list that, then you cannot prepare. Because if you don't know what the other person is looking for, then you are shooting in the dark, right? Now, if you just think about what is an IMA or any B school interviewer looking for, if you're, say, an engineer, because I'm an engineer, so I can comment on that. He's not looking for depth of your physics understanding, right? He's not looking for whether you are following Nobel Prize, who has won, etc. What is that person looking for? Are you curious? Because in B school, you need curiosity. So whatever it is that you think you know about, as I said, Mahabharata, my conversation revolved around psychology. Now I'm an mechanical engineering graduate. 15 minutes we spoke about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, because I had written about it in my VAT, because that was something that I was very interested in, human psychology. Now, that's the first thing, which is whatever you're curious about. It can be football, it can be content. Are you curious enough to have depth of knowledge? Because if you say, I really like watching cricket, but then you don't know what is happening in the IPL auctions, or you don't know what's happening in the Border Gavaskar Trophy, that is a very big red flag. Because after that, the interviewer believes that, look, this person is passionate about cricket. About cricket also, this person does not know. So how can I trust that this person will work really hard? That's the number one thing. The number two thing is drive or rigor ability. Because look, as difficult as it is to get into IIM, it is much tougher to graduate. And they know that. Obviously, for students, right now it is ki bas we have to go to IIM, right? But a lot of people don't realize udhar jaake it's much, much tougher. And the profs want to check for that, which is, can you work really, really hard? Fortunately or unfortunately, that's a reality that you will have to work 16-hour days, 14-hour days, at a stretch, 6 days a week, to be able to be successful in that B school. Now, if in life you have never done that, then nobody wants to take a punt, right? Like you have lived for 22 years or 23 years. No. So far, I've not worked hard, but I will come to your institute and I will work 16 hours a day. That nobody will believe in, right? So even if you have a low CGPA, if you're able to explain to them why that CGPA is low, which shows rigor. If your CGPA is low because you were sitting and watching Netflix, that's not the right approach. But if it is low because you were going for football tournaments or you were going for dance tournaments, that is still a very acceptable answer. So I think just as a simple framework to think about what the other person is looking for, structuring answers on that. So if you know that the other person is looking for curiosity, the other person is looking for ambition or drive, and third is critical reasoning or problem solving. Then when you're writing the answers, as Arsh said, when you're sitting, preparing, making sure that you're confident, can you do a litmus test saying, does this answer show that I'm a curious person? Does this answer show that I can work hard? And does this answer show that I have problem solving ability? If it does not, change the answers. Because you have an opportunity to show that you have these three things. Don't waste that opportunity by talking about things randomly.
So guys, interacting with them, what I understand is, first, self-introspection. I always say so. Second, you should have a drive. Third, passion. And fourth most important thing is problem-solving approach. And rightly said, I've interacted with a lot of people who just land at an IIM and then they call, sir, फंस गया हूँ, मुझे ऐसा लगता है last position पर मैं ही हूँ इस पूरे batch में. This is true. So you have to understand, it's not just crossing the bar of the interview. It's more than that. You have to sustain there for 2 years. So you have to develop that. So एक video series आपके साथ interviews के लिए we will do that. And I'll be taking help of these guys also, because these are young people who have just passed out from IIM's FMS, IFT, IIM Calcutta on their campus. I've seen them, I've interacted with them. So we will be doing a kind of a thing where I'll help you out with my experience on answers, with young brain answering interview questions, so that you can actually work on your interviews and prepare these answers. We'll come up with that later on. But this is the most important thing that you have to understand, that you have to create a structure for your answer. And every question has to be structured and it has to be organized. Okay, so moving to the next part, which is again an important question from you, and we covered up this question last time also in a different fashion, and this time I'm taking it in a different fashion. But हाँ, तुम्हें बहुत फायदा होगा इससे. To you, Aalekh, एक बच्चा आता है जो डोमेन नॉलेज के साथ आता है, right. और एक आता है जो बिल्कुल ब्लैंक आया था, मुझे कुछ नहीं पता, मार्केटिंग क्या होती है, फाइनेंस क्या होता है. आप इंजीनियरिंग बैकग्राउंड से थे, आपके लिए सब ब्लू था, आप IIM पहुँचे, आपको पता पड़ा कुछ दुनिया में मार्केटिंग होती है, कुछ फाइनेंस होता है, कुछ HR होता है, कुछ IT होता है. तो डोमेन नॉलेज लेके आना कितना इंपॉर्टेंट है, बिकॉज नाउ यू हैव एंटर्ड इनटू द अदर साइड, यू आर नाउ इनटू ट्रेनिंग पार्ट, टीचिंग पार्ट, वेयर यू आर ट्रेनिंग B schools for the corporate ladder.
Right. So, sir, this has two parts, right? One is, do you know enough about the domains? Second is, do you have a preference, right? And I'm splitting the two. Because the first part, which is having perspective, having knowledge, not having that, there is no excuse today. Today we are well and truly in the information age. Everything is available at the click of a button. For somebody to not know what marketing is, what marketing career looks like, just shows lack of research, right? I understand everybody is busy, everybody has other things to do. You will be busier when you go to B school, 10 times busier. So use this time. Obviously, right now, people should focus on interview prep, but after interview also, there is at least a 2-month window where nothing too intense, but getting perspective, speaking to seniors, speaking to alumni, understanding what does your career look like. Because when you go to B school, you will have lesser time to do that. The second part, which is having a preference, I think that can be pushed out, because a lot of times you always will get more perspectives when you go to B school. Second, you might realize that some careers or domains that you aspired for, you're not the best fit because your profile does not fit, or you're not able to clear the subjects with A grades, etc., etc. All of those are variables that will be there, but not having knowledge, not researching should be not excusable in my mind in today's day and age, because after you go to B school, you will want to do it and then you will not have the time to do it.
And I believe it is helpful at the time of interview also. Correct. So we cannot give this escape की interview के बाद कर लेना. Career goals का answer बनाने के लिए, why this specialization का answer बनाने के लिए, why should I select you का answer बनाने के लिए. For all these things, this is actually required. So guys, please start working on this. No excuse for this कि मैं domain knowledge develop नहीं कर पाया. Now next very relevant thing जो तुम्हारे लिए important है क्योंकि तुम उस segment में move कर रहे हो. Let's say हम पढ़े आज से 25 साल पहले. This guy was studied. He has studied 10 years back. He has studied some 3-4 years back. MBA, that is management education. Now, since you guys are एकदम बिल्कुल fresh, I would say in terms of knowledge that you have gained at IIM or FMS, do you think management education has evolved, and how this has impacted when you were creating your program?
Right. So has it evolved? Most certainly, I would say. There are some things that have not changed. So the pedagogy is still the same. The pedagogy IIMA, when it started, used to follow a case-based methodology. Today, it still follows a case-based methodology, which means that students read the case, students prepare their solutions, then they come in the class, they discuss the case. This cycle still remains the same. What's changed slightly is the subjects that these institutes have picked up, right? So a lot of them now teach some digital electives, etc. However, the pace of that is prescribed by the UGC or the AICT, so which is a central government body which says that, hey, from today, any institute that is giving PGDM should teach digital marketing. Now, we understand that the pace at which some of the bureaucracy moves might be slightly slower than what the industry demands, and that is the challenge. So has the evolution happened? Yes, but fundamentally it's not changed. People are still referring to the same books. The marketing book, which is Kotler, was written in the 70s. It's still used today with, of course, some new cases, some new examples, but the theories are the same. Now, the challenge happens in things that are completely shifted. So I'll give you a finance example, right? So for example, account statement used to look the same 30 years ago, looks the same today also. But how digital businesses burn cash and still make money, that is the adaptation of this. That part is missing. So that fundamental is still taught. Every B school grad knows what balance sheet is, what income statement is, but people don't need, right? Most people don't need to ever read a balance sheet. What you need is, how can I use that to build a business? That part, the ecosystem has changed so much that I think that B schools have not fully evolved, which is application of those concepts to today's industry context. I think that's the part where evolution has been behind pace. The second thing I would say is on the faculty itself, right? So traditionally, faculties always have to have PhDs, right? And that makes sense. But you speak to any industry professional who wants to teach also, there is a sense of frustration, which is, why do I need to spend 5 years in a PhD? I believe I can add value to them. Imagine some CXO, CEO wants to take time out to teach. And institutes will say, yeah, okay, you come as a guest faculty, take one course and you go, because we can't onboard you as a full-time faculty. I think that's another place which has not changed. So faculties used to be PhDs from top universities, very, very well-researched, academic folks. But the industry side of the faculty, the percentage of courses taken by industry experts, that's not changing. Maximum, they'll come, take one guest lecture, they'll go, which does not do education, which is just entertainment almost. You know, you hear from somebody's 1 hour speech, which you could have heard on YouTube also, and that's something which happens. Yeah.
No, I think just one more perspective I want to add on this is, just as we're talking about evolution of management education, if we just trace back how, let's say, the MBA started, it's something that I always talk about whenever someone comes to me to get some perspective. The MBA was started by Harvard, right? It was started as a response to the needs of the industry, right? That was the time of industrial revolution, and you wanted people with an understanding of a horizontal skill set across finance, marketing, HR, right? All of this, right? And that was the requirement of that day, right? And you needed managers, you got them, right? And of course, everyone else, the world followed US, let's say, right? And we got them, right? Now if you cut to today, right? Almost 100 years later, right? And of course, we have evolved in the overall, you have specializations and all, right? But just in the way that, what is the requirement today, right? I mean, today, if you go to let's say if you go to the founder of Zomato, right, they are not hiring management trainees anymore, right? What they're hiring for are specialist skills, right? That can you get someone who can run, let's say, our growth funnels, right? Now, the point is, you do not have that opportunity to learn it unless you are motivated enough, which is where, you start finding some online programs and all. But even if you want to learn that, you do not have a lot of opportunities, right? Again, here I want to have a nuance. Top schools are still able to provide that, right? If you go to an ISB, let's say, FMS, right? I mean, if even we had some guest faculties coming in, right? In addition to the faculties, very expert faculties that we had, right? But it's not something that you'll find in every B school, right? And that is where access to these roles who are anyways looking out for good talent, gets restricted, right? So that is where the pace of evolution is there, right? So the overall question is two parts. Has evolution happened? Yes. Has it kept pace with what is required? Probably no, right? That's at least my take on it.
I mean, इसको थोड़ा different तरीके से सोचते हैं. How has your education at these premium B schools, I mean, MBA aspirants के लिए तो godly है, उसने कैसे help किया कि मैं एक ideal corporate training model बना दूँ, which can be linked up with an MBA program or a PGP program, and then I can deliver that. So, MBA aspirants के point of view से बात कर रहे हैं अपन, क्योंकि इनको ये समझना पड़ेगा कि कोई भी curriculum बनाया जाता है, तो how you guys have worked on that. So, since you have studied at the godly places, most premium business schools, IIM, FMS, how this has helped you in understanding to create the exact ideal corporate training curriculum, and then link it up with a PGP program.
Right. So I think to create this program, we took our experience in two pockets. One, our B school experience, and the second is our industry experience. And we really married the two. I'll explain to you, for example, on 2-3 parameters. First is the curriculum. So we took our B school curriculum. We married it, of course, with all of our experiences to say what are the things that helped us do better in our jobs, that helped us grow in our jobs, that helped us deliver business, right? We imbibed those things from our B school in the curriculum, but the balance top up we did from whatever we had learned in the industry, whatever our external panel of mentors have learned in the industry. The second is the pedagogy, right? So, for example, we know that we all learn better when we do things, not when we listen to things or when we read things, right? That is what we imbibe. So our students apply things, whatever they learn in the classroom. More importantly, when it comes to the pedagogy, what we've realized after having worked is the first thing is that the rigor in these top tier B schools was very high. So you had to work sleepless nights, a lot of work, and that paid off. Because then when you go to the industry, everything feels easier because you've done it in the past. And the second is maintaining a really, really high standard. I'll take a second to talk about that, because what happens in college assignments is that you're looking to just submit. Ki I'll do something, I'll submit, deadline hai, submit karna hai. But that's not how it works in the professional workplace. The quality of the work that you do is a lot more important than just getting it done and shipping some random thing which you don't believe in. So I think these are the two things that we've imbibed into the program. So our students undergo a very rigorous curriculum, and we hold them to a very high standard. So if a student does not submit a great assignment, we don't just give them low marks and send them back. We ask them to do it again. So that they do it again. So that the fifth time that they do it, the quality is of a certain higher bar.
Sure. And I think just one more thing to add on to that is just to provide those avenues where that application of the concepts that they learn, in the class, they can do that, right? And, I'll just take 1 minute to talk about that. So when I was at FMS, I used to be a part of this club called Strategy Labs, right? So this was the, the club which used to provide overall live project opportunities for students, right? Now, one thing that I realized was that, the kind of learnings that students have as they go through these live projects was immense, right? It's not even comparable, right? Internships sure are there, right? Internships, but even in an internship, at the back of the mind, you're thinking that, like, how do I convert this into a PPO, right? So for sure, for 3-4 weeks out of the 8 weeks, you're putting in the effort and value is getting added, you're learning. But live projects was where, students who got through were not doing it for the money, right? Because the stipend and all, were secondary, right? They were just doing it for just, perspective and just, learning hands-on skills, right? Now, this was something that, when we actually do this at Altera, right? We make it a point that every student who we have as a part of our program, they get access to, working on a live project, right? Because what happens is, and this happens for us I think at the end of term 2, right? Because what that does is that by term 2, as term 2 ends, they have a certain level of understanding about a lot of concepts, right? But they haven't really had that aha moment, right? Which is when you actually get to apply, right? And in the first week, everyone goes in with their, expectation that we're going to kill it. And it's actually quite the reverse, right? But, this is what happens when you join a job, right? You, in the initial few days, you struggle, right? But can you, short circuit that learning path, right? Which is what, through live projects, through term projects, through a lot of case competitions, along with companies that we do, we just give them those avenues where you are applying, because then when you go to any interviews of these top companies, right? I'll not name a company, but, in the previous cycle, one company, they actually conducted 6 rounds of interview, right, for just few candidates. Now, that is something that was unheard of for me, right? Because then they're not just asking basic introductions, right? They're actually testing them on skills, right? Because this is what companies do now for good roles, right? So the point is that if that is the expectation, how do you make sure that students are able to match up, right? It's just that. It's just reverse engineering for that. Yeah.
So guys, 2 things. First, ability to work hard that they had and they developed also in those 2 years, and skill set. These are the 2 things which now they are trying to create amongst aspirants who are not able to make it to an IIM or let's say FMS or SPGen. Okay, quick छोटा सा क्वेश्चन है क्योंकि तुम लोग अब इस साइड पे काम कर रहे हो, एंड डू यू थिंक कि MBA एस्पायरेंट के लिए IIM, FMS, SPGen, MDI इसके बाहर लाइफ एग्जिस्ट करती है? क्योंकि मैं हमेशा बोलता हूँ करती है, मुझे नहीं पता, because now you guys are on this side, so you'll have to be very honest while answering this.
So I'll tell you advantage क्या होता है of having a top tier degree, right? There are basically only 2 advantages. One is you have a safety net, right? I call it a get out of jail card hai. You can make one big mistake in your corporate career and you can still land safely because your degree, your alumni network will secure that. The second is slightly, it becomes your starting ground is higher. So the timeline is slightly crunched. The final end destination is CEO you don't need an IIM degree to be a CEO. It's just that the timeline can be slightly crunched, but the biggest advantage is just safety net. So if you're not going to an IIM, you have to back yourself with the right skill sets. And today, more than ever before, the industry is very receptive of absorbing talent that has the right skill set, because people have also realized that is what matters, and delivery in jobs and careers is what matters. Maybe safety net will be weaker, so you'll have to make some smart decisions, but definitely can be achieved. Same goals.
Yeah, I think definitely just the value on skill set has been higher, right? And just from an institute's perspective, right, we are not here to, let's say, compete with the likes of IIMs and ISBs and FMS. These are great institutes, right? All of us who are, in the founding team, we ourselves are from those institutes, right? So we have massive respect for them. FMS honestly was the best time and, the most value add that I could have ever had, in my career. So they are still able to do that, right? The only thing is that access is limited over there, right? And our point is that outside of these, 15, 20 institutes also, there have to be more institutes that are able to provide excellence in business education, right? That is where we position ourselves, right? Because, if someone asks me that should I go to an FMS or an Altera, I would absolutely go to an FMS, right? But not everyone has an opportunity, right? There are still 270, 280 seats, I think, at FMS, right? So that is where access.
I can say, to summarize, that we are trying to create value addition and a culture which exists, and it has come from the same people, from the same roots, because you guys, they are your alma mater, so you can say that कि हाँ वहीं से आया है सब कुछ. बिल्कुल ठीक बात है, opportunity नहीं होती, I agree to that. Okay, before we close this, one last question. Not exactly, this is not a question, guys. This is one out of curiosity which I have in my mind. When I entered the place, I entered their campus, I saw a lot of logos and companies' photographs displayed here and there. And I think some odd 8 to 10 companies' logos. And what does that mean?
So, for a traditional education institute, industry tie-ups are the cherry on top of the cake, but the cake is academia. Hamara cake itself is the industry tie-ups, right? So our curriculum is created in partnership with top marketing companies like HUL, Mamaearth, and the Mullen Lowlintas Group. So our curriculum is not prescribed by a government academic body. It's prescribed or aligned with industry experts. Our mentors are 100% from the industry. There is nobody who teaches who has not spent time or is currently working in some of India's top companies. And the third is, of course, our pedagogy. As Arsh said, as a part of the curriculum, they do live projects with the industry. We have more than 10 live projects already running parallelly for the students with brands like Himalaya, Nat Habit, Sanfi, etc., which is a great opportunity for the students. So I would say those logos are roots. For a traditional institute, that is the cherry on top of the cake. For us, that's the cake itself on all of curriculum, pedagogy, as well as the mentors.
Great, wonderful. So MBA aspirants, this is another version that we have just shared with you. We'll be coming back to you with some videos with these guys, these chaps, on how to prepare for interviews, some specific questions, why MBA, strength, weakness, maybe introduction, all these things. Till then, keep watching. Wish you all the best, guys. Keep rocking. Do well, but be serious, be hardworking, and start the second stage preparation from now. Okay, so wish you all the best, guys. Keep rocking. Bye bye from my side, and thank you to these chaps, young chaps, who just helped me out in preparing this for you so that you can get some content sitting in any part of the city, any part of the country. Okay, thank you.